On today's episode, Missy and I are talking about perspective.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of On Finding Peace. And Missy and I join you to talk about life tips on ways that we can live daily toward our inner peace and happiness. And today we're going to be talking about perspective, what perspective means, and how we keep a perspective on what's going on in life right now, and what we can do to maybe change that perspective if need be.
Absolutely.
So
How's things going for you?
things are going pretty good. We're still living under certain regulations for this wonderful COVID that's still with us. So there's still a lot going on with that, and but I think we're coping with and living in this new normal. How about with you?
Well, we're finally in our new house. I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the background has changed a little bit. It's still kind of still have the same color paint, but super excited. It's been a very overwhelming and long process, but we are in and we're super excited. So there's still boxes in the background, but we're getting there. So I feel really good about that.
Awesome. Now, I think newness brings with it that excitement and challenge.
Absolutely. And, I'm grateful. I'm super grateful that we're here because even though we've had some, ups and downs along the road, it's like, it's worth it. It was totally worth the whole trip because we learned so much. We learned patience, we learned understanding, and we learned how good we are as a team together. So it's been pretty
Nice.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because sometimes that can bring out the worst in people instead of the best in people.
I
So
will tell you, we learned we both hate couch shopping. He's like, no, not this one, no, not this one. And he's just like, I love you. Thank you, God, for picking a couch finally. But yeah, he's got a lot of patience.
well, I can't even imagine. I've in my life I have moved often, but I have never had to pack an entire house.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know what that's like. I don't know if I want to know what that's like.
It really wasn't that bad. I mean, I don't feel like honestly, I kind of, like I said, I did it over a 6-month process. So he would go, babe, where's the banana holder? And I'd go, I packed it. what do we need to keep the banana holder out for? We're moving. So it could be gone for 6 months. So, yeah, I'm sure he found that interesting, but yeah, I didn't want to feel rushed. I didn't want to feel
Around for 6 months.
yeah, I just didn't want to feel like pressured to get it all done so fast. Come on, girls.
Yeah. And that's probably the key. If you have that ability to pre-plan it, do it at a workable pace so that you're not overdoing it and overstressing. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it because it's like you really can get analysis paralysis is where you're like, oh my gosh, there's just so much to do. I don't know what to do. I'm not going to do anything. And definitely just by kind of doing a little bit at a time and what's the next logical step and following through that way really can change the perspective of how you're working through something, whatever the circumstances.
nice way to weave in the topic.
I know, right?
But I was thinking the same thing actually. So
Yeah,
that
because we
really
got it
is
like that.
perspective.
We did. We got it like that. We're vibing. That's what happens.
Hmm.
Well,
Well, I think it's just that's always on the top of my mind because I've been using that as the basis of what helped me in life, and whenever I teach any of my college classes or in most of my writings, I'm always throwing in a section on perspective
Yeah.
because I think it's really makes the big difference in life, and many of us just seem to gloss over that.
Yeah. Well, and and taking the time to celebrate when your perspective is one way versus another, because sometimes we've spent so much time in a dark perspective, right? I mean, for years, I think it took me a long time to recognize, like, where am I and what am I really, how am I looking at the situation? And I would see finally that I was in a victim mentality, or I wasn't being accountable for my own actions and my own thoughts. And so in moving forward in growth, I was able to question, what is this for? How can I learn from it? And it's changed the way that I look at things, because now I know it's a gift. I know no matter what happens, if the closing gets pushed off, well, there must have been some reason. And I'm telling you, like, my closing got pushed back 30, it was 45 days to begin with. They got pushed back to 60 days for a circumstance that, wasn't related to myself, but I was like, okay, well, no big deal. Well, now the interest rates have dropped and I'm at, a 3% interest rate and locked in. Oh, okay. Thank you for saving me money. Like, I know that there's good in what happens. I know that when I'm focused on where I want to be and I continue to focus there, then it just always comes together. I don't know how, and I don't always get to say how it unfolds, but at the same time, trusting the process has been a huge lesson.
Awesome. And I would totally agree with that. It's, I think people forget to look at the thing of perspective, because a lot of times, and I used to catch myself doing this, and a lot of my clients will do this, that, they'll say, well, the way I think is my reality. What you're really saying is the way that I perceive my perception is my reality.
Right.
And I like to make that distinction, because if you just say, well, that's just the way it is, that kind of takes away our ability to interact with that.
Yeah.
If that is just the way it is, well, then there's not a thing I can do about it. And then that can bring on its own stressors and negativity. But if we look at it and say, well, this is my perspective, which is my reality,
Yeah.
then I can change my perspective. See, I'm not stuck with saying, well, this is what the world has given me, so I'm stuck.
Well, and that seems almost like hopelessness at the same time, like, it is what it is. Well, it's hopeless, it's useless, I can't change it. And I understand the mentality of, the best way to put it, I think, is, you're going to be in that situation, so you get to deal with it, you get to do what you do. But one of my teachers has taught me, it's not ready, aim, fire. It's ready, fire, aim, because the course is always changing. And so if you're constantly focused on the goal and what you want to accomplish, then it doesn't matter where the course goes. You're always aiming for what you want. You see, I'm talking with my hands a lot, but, and then you don't feel hopeless.
Right.
You don't have the, more like the I don't care attitude is what I get from the it is what it is sometimes. And that's my perspective, right? So my perspective is that we get to do something about it. Okay, something new we get to create around, something new we get to be patient over, something better is coming along. And maybe it's a Pollyanna attitude. I mean, I've been told that before, like, okay, but at the same time, it helps you to get through. Like, I will tell you that I have a 5-second pity party, and then I'm like, oh, nope, not going there. And let the thought go. And I train my people to think of it like a wisp of smoke, or, like a balloon floating off into the, it's just a thought. You are not your thoughts. You don't have to, take it to dinner, invite it to live with you. You get to just go, oh yeah, peace out. That was cool. Bye. Because it's trying to teach you something.
Well, and that's, I think what trips up a lot of us is that we believe our thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes our perspective is, how I believe my thoughts helps me to see how things are on the outside, and that becomes my reality. But one of the things that I share with my clients is, why are we believing all of our thoughts?
Mm.
And a lot of times they'll say, well, because it's our thought. Well, one is we have to remember that we're the creators of our thought.
Yeah.
So if we can create our thought, that means we can change our thought, we can delete our thought. But the other piece that I look at it as, so it's my thought, and I'm going to say, well, I'm ugly. That's my thought. So I must be ugly. But then I think back, when I was a kid, I used to think I was like Superman or Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That was my thought.
I was Wonder Woman.
There you go. And at least for me in Superman or Spider-Man, that thought was not a true reality.
Yeah. I know.
So,
I broke a few ankles jumping off of wood piles. So you're right. You're right.
Yep, I could never fly.
No.
I'm glad you didn't try to get in the line of any bullets.
Yeah.
But, couldn't fly, but that was my thought. And, when I think about that thought now, I can say, well, that's just not realistic.
Yeah.
But why, if I have the thought I'm ugly, why do I jump at that and go, oh man, I'm so ugly, and then let that take me down?
Yeah.
Why all of a sudden is that thought true?
Yeah.
So, I think we need to really look at our thoughts in that way.
Well, most of the things that we actually think and believe we created when we were very young, when we're meaning making machines always. But when we were very young, okay, so I wanted a doll. I asked my dad for a doll. It was my birthday. My dad didn't give me a doll. I must be unworthy. I must be unlovable, and now you've grown years and years later, and you're thinking things like that just aren't serving you. Right. And it's just a story. And the thing is that a lot of people, a lot of humans think that they are that story. Well, if I change the story, then who am I? Right. And then we feel like we're going to lose ourselves. We're scared of losing what we think we're supposed to be. And it just doesn't have to be that way. Like, it's a little bit at a time. It's tiny shifts. It's what one of my first coaches used to call the purple bunny conundrum, right? If we try to force this thought out of our head of purple bunnies, well, now we're thinking of purple bunnies, and those purple bunnies are fuzzy and they're cute, and like, get them out. We don't want to talk about purple bunnies anymore, but you can't stop, So it's allowing that thought to pass through. It's allowing it to just transfer. It's energy, and if it's not energy you want to create in your space, in your life, then you get to just let it go.
Yeah. And when we look at this in the way of perspective, it's important then to realize that we can always look at whatever's going on from a different viewpoint. So like when you say, we learned many of the ways that we think about ourselves from when we were younger, and we reinforced it. And then when people say, well, if I change, then I won't know who I am, I won't be the same. Usually I look at my clients and say, but I thought that was the point.
Yeah. You don't like where you're at right now.
You are right now.
Yeah.
So you're telling me I don't like who I am. So then I'm saying change your perspective, and it's like, oh, well, I'll lose myself and I won't know who I am.
Yeah.
Isn't that the perspective conundrum we were talking about?
Yeah.
That you wanted to change?
Yeah.
So you're right. We might lose who we are as far as who we were, but who am I becoming? And if we want to continue to grow and, improve ourselves, we will become different.
Absolutely. Continuous aim, right? And of course I say this a lot, but it's a muscle. If we're constantly working out the muscle of telling that same story over and over again, then that muscle is going to be buff, man. It's going to be strong. But once you start to, work out the puny muscle a little bit more and a little bit more, then this one gets weak and this one gets strong, and it does, it really just changes your entire outlook on life, and
Yep.
it gives you that sense of peace that we're after in talking about what we're talking about, like the ability to just be like, what could possibly be different about what I'm thinking? What could possibly change if I thought about this differently? And just really being in the question of, are you open to new possibilities of seeing things differently?
Right. And that's the important thing is, when people say, I want to change or I want to be different, are you really prepared for that?
Yeah.
Because you could lose your old self and become a new self.
Right.
But that's not a bad thing. Again, if we change perspective, we can look at that perspective from, okay, yeah, you lose something and therefore it's a negative. Or we can look at it and say, but you're going to gain something new and that could be a positive.
Yeah.
But
And
again, it's all in how we want to look at perspective and look at life.
right. And we can't try, because it's a decision. When you're trying, there's no deciding. When you're just not doing it.
Yep. I wrote in a recent article that, when we look at our thoughts and we can say that we're our own worst enemy, a lot of people will use that phrase and then say, well, see how negative that is. Well, it can be negative, but my take on that is that we shift the perspective. If I'm my worst enemy, then isn't it possible that I could also become my best friend?
Yes, I love it. That was one.
So that shift in perspective, we can
Yeah,
look at it different.
that was one of the first lessons that I think that really really hit me hard when it came into transformation, is because I do everything nice for everybody. I'm kind, I compliment, I'm loving, I'm forgiving, I do all of the things that I feel like anybody would want a friend or a family member to do, but I didn't do it for me. So there was a definite struggle for self-love in my book, actually, the Phoenix Program. In the very last chapter, I wrote a poem that just describes, like I was in the ring constantly with myself. I was beating myself up over and over and over again. And it was like, one day it was just like, wait a minute. I believe it was the Untethered Soul, where he says, if your internal voice was an external person, how long would you hang out with that person? And I was like, I had a few expletives for that person that I won't mention here, but I was like, girl, you got to go. And so I started to ignore the shitty committee and started to compliment myself and celebrate myself. And yeah, I even did affirmations until the affirmations didn't need to be faked. You know what I mean? Like, I said them because they didn't feel right. Initially, it didn't feel comfortable. But then as I said them more and more, it was like, oh, wait, I am beautiful. I am worthy. I am loving. I am caring. I am all those things. And I didn't need affirmations anymore, because then I just knew I built the muscle up, So, but I love that you said that, because I think that there's so many people who are looking on the outside of themselves for love, companionship, and all those things, but they don't recognize that it starts with you.
Yeah. And again, I think that's the key with the perspective, and one of the quotes that I came across, and this has been attributed to a lot of different authors, so I really don't know who actually said it. But it's the quote that says, we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah, I love
That's
that.
awesome. Yeah. And
When I first found it, I can't remember where I found it. And like I say, it's been attributed to many different people, but it's really saying that, yeah, if you don't feel good about yourself, that's going to color the world around you.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
how could I have such low self-esteem, self-respect, self-love, and then look out at the world and say, "Oh, it's a beautiful place"?
Right. You're
Of course,
right.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. And it will reflect us, and I know
Hmm.
we've had this conversation before, but I have to say that every circumstance is a lesson, right? Everything that you encounter is a lesson. And, if it really boils down to the metaphysical, there is no you, there's only me. So, in the things that I witness in the world, if I spot it, I got it. If I'm like, oh, that guy was mean, well, I must be being mean somewhere. So I get to clean that up. I get to fix it because I
Hmm.
couldn't have people like that in my space if I wasn't first that myself,
Right.
you know?
And what I loved with that quote too is that it gives me then hope, because if I am only seeing the negative in the world, then that must mean there's a lot of negative in me, which then means I can change that.
Yeah.
I can't change the world.
Yeah.
When we talk about this virus and all the other stuff that's going on in society right now,
Yeah.
I don't have that ability to change any of that. Not me myself, but I can change my interior. And when that interior changes, then I'm going to be able to see all of this stuff on the outside from a whole different perspective.
Well, what if, and I say this in perspective, what if in healing yourself based on what you're perceiving, you're healing the rest of us because we're all connected?
Ooh.
So that's the
Now
way
we're
that
getting into philosophy and
yeah.
metaphysics world.
Yeah, exactly. The metaphysical, because that's the way I see it. The greater good for me to do the things that I'm doing, the work that I get to do in this life, and healing the self-love. I know I'm healing it for you, for all of our listeners, for my family, for my children. I know that they're coming a step up because I get to figure out, and I'm figuring out more and more each day how to grow and how to heal the things that I've had to deal with, doing karma, the law of mentalism, things like that, and the ripple effect is real. Like, to me, we have no idea how many listeners that we actually have and whose lives we're touching, and the ability that we have to just open up and share our hearts and have that little change for them, that little change in perspective could give them a whole
Hmm.
new meaning of life. you
Yep.
know I quick story to share. Um, at one point in my life, I was suicidal, and I prayed. I was like, God, please help me, help me, help me. What am I going to do? I'm so miserable. Like, I was just in a very dark place. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden, I get a phone call from a gentleman. I used to be an ordained minister, and this gentleman reaching out to me on social media, and I kept blowing him off like, I don't know what you want. Stop bothering me. Well, I finally responded, and he said to me that he was thinking of, taking his life. And I'm going to tell you that I picked up the phone immediately and I spoke life into this gentleman for 3 hours. And even though it was 3 hours, like, it was life changing, not only for him but for me as well. And that was the perspective shift I needed. It was the prayer answered for me. Even though, I mean, thankfully I feel like I've done something for him as well. That's, sounds a little selfish, but at the same time, he was exactly what I needed. And that's the, gratefulness that I have from that moment. I know that was a
Yeah.
little dark, but like, that's how effective that I feel like the universe is. When you ask, you're getting an answer. It might not come in the form that you want it to, but you're always going to get the answer.
Yeah. And in a perspective shift, I don't think that was dark at all.
Okay, well, good.
Because, well, just for my own,
I don't feel, but at the same time, I don't want to darken the mood here.
no, and I appreciate the sharing in that, you look then at that other perspective and say two lives were spared.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's a good thing, because like you say, how many lives now has that person touched,
Yes.
and how many lives have you touched? So all of that occurs because of that one incident.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as, dark at all. Had the outcome been different,
Yeah.
totally sad and dark story.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Um, but this really is all about, when I can change me, then I'm going to view the world different, and therefore I'm going to act different.
Yeah.
St. Francis of Assisi, one of my favorite people, in his famous prayer says, "It is in giving that we receive."
Amen. Yes, absolutely.
It's not the other way around. It's like
Yeah.
we get all this stuff and then you give some of it. No, it's in giving that we receive.
Yeah,
And that we become changed.
because they're one and the same. And I always go back to you teach most what you need to know. And so whenever I have a client or a friend or a family member, anybody that comes to me asking, hey, can you help shift my perspective? I always tell them it's a gift for me. Like, please call me anytime, really, because it's not just for you, it's for me as well. And
Yep.
and it's the ability to look at that situation and learn as you're just letting the love flow through, basically, is the best way I can describe it. And it really does, it shifts your perspective when you know that's what you have to look forward to, and how you can help heal yourself at the same time as healing others.
hmm And I'm convinced that, and I'm not saying this in a naive way or a Pollyanna type way, but I think every situation can be viewed from a different angle,
Yeah.
and that a positive can be found in everything.
Can you just be a little
Some things we have
Pollyanna
to
for
look
me?
deeper.
Just a little
Maybe a little,
Pollyanna for me.
maybe a
Okay,
little.
little, just for me, because I'll be Pollyanna all day, but I need somebody to do it with me, Chris. No,
Well,
good.
Pollyanna story if you want one. I used to, because again, changing perspective.
Yeah.
When I was working with high school kids, and there were times I had to take them out on these overnight retreats, and I'd be filling a school bus after school with 30 some, teenagers
You're a
after
brave
working
man.
all day. Yeah. So when you think perspective,
Yeah.
I've been working all day with teenagers. Now I'm throwing 30 some of them onto a bus after school that I'm going to spend a whole other day and evening with. Um, so shift in perspective, let's have a little fun with this.
Yeah.
So as they're struggling to get on the bus, I would just make the statement that we have to get on the bus as soon as possible, because the wheels on this bus
Go round and
just
round.
want to go round and round, and they can't. I would say that over and over until someone would look at me and say, now that's stuck in my head. And then I would think,
Uh-huh.
mission accomplished.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. I love that. It's such a dad joke, though, I have to tell you. We have to have our fun, okay? We have to.
Well, and in my mind, I could have just looked at that as the drudgery of, come on, guys, get on this bus, and start to get upset, and
Yeah.
or let's have some fun with this.
Yeah.
But again, now the kids who got that, they said something to somebody else on that bus.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it was in a way of mocking me. Can you imagine what he just said? Blah. But even if it was mocking me, they started laughing. And I don't care if it was at me.
Yeah.
They were now having a good time.
Yeah, that's it. You lightened the space. You made sure that they were having a good time, and you set the standard for them. So I think that's wonderful.
Although I always followed in my car, and I turned on the radio very quickly because I needed that song out of my head as quick as I could.
Yeah, I can see how that gets stuck. Trust me, I have meet so many times. That's great.
And for listeners who have it stuck in your head, well, change your perspective somehow.
That's great. I love it.
Subliminal messaging at its best.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So what about the listener challenge this week? What do you think?
We haven't done a listener challenge yet.
I think that You know, take some. That you're really, really like struggling with, and ask how there could be a different possibility of how you can look at it, you know, and make that your own personal challenge, you know, or and practice being your own best friend for a week,
Ooh.
because that could be a double dipper for you. But I'm telling you, like, the one of the best lessons in my life I've learned is to be kind to myself. And it really does, it just shifts the entire perspective of life.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we tend to forget that. You know, we tend to be more patient and comforting with others than we are with ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
Well, because we
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 should be with
proj-
ourselves the way we are with others.
yeah. Yeah. That's good. I like that. I'm just going to not say what I was going to say, because
No, go ahead, go ahead.
no, it was just because it's like when we try to predict the outcome, we suffer, right? And so we think we should be further along. We compare ourselves to others. That perspective needs to die. Like, it just needs to go away, because you know, we're not here to suffer. We're here to have fun. We're here to experience joy and laughter, and be light and at peace, you know, and that's the practice.
Yep. Yep.
So
I totally agree. And if you need to do some subliminal songs in people's heads, then
yeah, it's always a
because
blast to do that.
it's sad right now that Disney is closed because, you know, that wonderful ride, It's a Small World,
Oh no.
after all.
After all, it is a small world after all. Yeah, that
So for all the
just
listeners who are now angry at me for that one,
yeah, that's definitely it sticks in your head, that one for sure. But well, I think that I was pretty good this week on perspective.
yeah. So I think it's just important that we remember that we can change, you know, the
Yeah.
perspective. We can change how we look at things, and we're not stuck with our thoughts or our feelings, but we can change them.
Well, and it's always nice, I have to say, as one final thought, is it's always nice to have somebody who has a little bit different perspective than you do, you know, because
Yes.
it gives you good conversation, it allows you to open up to new possibilities, and you can be comfortable sharing yourself with other people that way, so that you can see a newer and different way.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah,
And we need more of that in today's world, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. Well, on
All
that
right.
note, thank you guys so much for listening.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing what you give us on the listener challenge, and send that to our social medias or emails. That's on our websites. So just click below for our websites. And don't forget about Patreon. If you really like us, then try to support us, and definitely tell your friends all about our conversations.
All right. Thanks so
So
much,
enjoy
Chris.
your new house, Missy.
Thank you. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.